Hello, everybody, and welcome to our speaker series session, Intuition at Work. Our host, Jess Pryce-Jones, will take it away momentarily, and we hope if you're catching the replay on our YouTube channel that you'll also subscribe and like those videos. It helps us to get out there, and please subscribe so you know when new replays are going live. And Jess, away to you. Oh, and you can come back off mute. I had to do the mute for everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Juliet, and welcome everybody to today. And just before I get going, and as everybody's coming in and settling down, could you just put into chat what brings you here today? And that way I'll know a little bit how to tailor and target what I'm saying. So you could just say idle curiosity if it's idle curiosity. That would be fine. So what brings you here today? If you can open chat and just let me know. And I'd love to know if any of you are experts in the room. It would be great to hear. So experts in intuition. Okay, thank you, Bernie and Shaf. So just a little bit more about intuition and what it is. Lisa, yeah. Very aware of the power of nudges. Annie, that's great to hear. You're very aware of the power of nudges, and that's really what we're going to be talking about. So we just want to share some stuff, and I hope that we get the opportunity to do that. And I'll make that happen. But if you have any questions as we go along, what I would love to know is what they are, and don't save them up from the end. Stick them in chat, put your hand up. Juliet will stop me if I'm not noticing. And let's just deal with them as they come up. So let's kick off with a small poll. So this is the time for your phone, folks. If you could grab your phones, and all you have to do is hold your phone up to the QR code. Now, if you haven't got the QR code and can't see it, haven't got a phone, you can also respond in chat. So I'm going to put the text instructions into chat so you can access this in chat too. So that is in chat if you prefer to do it not on your phone and open up, just copy and paste that little link into a browser. And when you've got that, you're going to be able to vote for either A, B, or C. So I can see that one person has voted for C, and this is a live poll, so the questions will come up as you answer. So
Jess, do you want to share that screen also?
It is, the responses are there, so you should be seeing them now. You could see right now, I'm A, feeling curious, B, distracted by my work, C, keen to get going. So tell me that you can see that screen.
I can see the link on the phone, but I can't see your slides. I don't know if you want to have your slides up for everyone right now or not.
Okie dokie, let's just try sharing that one again. So let's share my screen again. Let's see how we go. Okay, you seeing that now?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Juliet. Okay, so we've got feeling curious and keen to get going. So fantastic. We've got some votes in there. If anyone's struggling, could they just give a shout out and let us know that they're struggling? So we're going to be using this functionality again. So don't close that down. Don't close it down if you've got that open on your phone. Just leave it open because it will change as we go through this short presentation today. And I'm going to stay on for a bit after we're done for anyone who's got more questions and would like more conversation. Right, so thank you for voting. Let's move on to where we're going to be. So a little bit about myself before we get going. So mainly what I do is I'm an executive coach, and that's what I spend 90% of my working life doing. And I've got more experience than I would care to say in this field. And I also coach teams, and they can be all over the world. They can be on Zoom, and I'll go and work there too. But I've also got a lot of experience in working in business schools. And I've worked at Cornell, Chicago, Cambridge, Oxford, Slade Business School, Atlanta Business School. And in all these business schools, there's one interesting thing. I haven't found a single course, a lecture, a seminar, nothing on using your intuition at work. And by the way, I used to follow one learned professor at London Business School. I was always a lecturer after him. And he would teach about decision making. And he would say, Anna, you actively need to avoid using your intuition. Well, Zega, I totally and utterly disagree with you. Because the one thing I do know as a coach is when you push people to work with their intuition, they generally can come up with answers pretty quick. So just yesterday, I was coaching someone and they had been struggling between decision A and decision B, and they'd gone with decision B, and we had a conversation. And they then were regretting decision B. So they wanted to have a whole hour with me about decision B. Fine, no problem. We got on the phone and I just said, if you went now and changed your decision back to A, tell me how you feel. And the answer was, my entire body feels lighter. I feel much more energized. I go, okay, that's your answer. It's that simple. It took us 2 minutes to nail what had been vexing someone for 48 hours. Really, really wasn't a long process. So this is the point of intuition. There are very few ways of work of doing something better, faster, cheaper, which is what we're all asked for. But intuition can take you to that better, faster, cheaper place. So let's move into what we're going to be doing today. So this taster agenda, it's just a taster agenda, a little overview of what it is and how it works. And to consider that, my opinion of Freud, sorry to say for all those of you who are Freudians and love him, is that he was a misogynistic cokehead. Setting aside the misogynistic cokehead, I do like this quote that intuition is this gift that we have, but we've really put it to one side. We've got this society which is entirely evidence-based, which I approve of. I mean, I think we need evidence and we need facts and we need data, but we also need this other side that can bring us so much. So how are we going to tackle that today? We're going to think about what intuition is. We're going to consider why it matters. And then I'd like to organize some breakout rooms with how it works. So you just can start to be more aware of your own process. So for some of you, that will just be a going over, and others of you will be a go, oh, I hadn't noticed that before. So it's a noticing. That's the real point of intuition, is this noticing. So to get to that final point 3, I would love you to think, is there something that I could share with 2 other people? And you don't have to describe the very personal ins and outs, but you could just give us some overview, some high-level detail, some high-level overview of it, and detail if you really want to. But just share what that situation is so that others can respond intuitively. So it might be about a relationship. It might be about something that you're just chewing over in your mind. It might be a situation that you haven't yet fully thought through. So it doesn't need to be super complex, just something you consider that it's okay for you to share. And we'll get to that. But if you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine also. So that's what we're going to cover right now. Let's think about what intuition is and some definitions. So these definitions, you can definitely see the psychologists here, right? This knowledge or cognition without evident rational thought and inference, or judgments that arise through rapid, non-conscious and holistic associations. I prefer this simple feeling of knowing. And so for me, that encapsulates the sentiment part, the thing that's going on for you in your body, and the cognitive piece as well. You could also have knowing without knowing how you know, which sounds to me a bit like a tongue twister. And lots of people like that. But for me, that doesn't totally work because you haven't got this feeling part, this energy part. And I think that that's a super important attribute of intuition. So that's what intuition is for me. And your own definitions are absolutely fine. But I think that there are some things that we can say about it and they're these. Yes, it's unconscious, it's speedy, and it's somatic. So you've got something going on in your body, subconscious, speedy, somatic. So triple S, if you like. is another way of thinking about it. But it's useful because it alerts you. It alerts you to problems and it alerts you to answers. And your own cues, your intuitive cues, are the things that often, when you're really super under pressure, you don't have time to pay attention to. So the question is then, how do we get to do that? And how do you just take that beat to go, okay, what am I tuning into here? What am I getting? So that's intuition. So now the big question is, why bother to think about this thing? And why bother? I mean, I really do think that it is a superpower. It is something that is so special, special to be nurtured. And it is something that takes you to the top, which you will never, never hear. Nobody will ever say intuition is one of the big accelerators of your career. But let's just look at some data. And it took me about a week to go through literally hundreds of papers and dig out just these 4 critical facts. So lots of papers in lots of domains tell us how people experience intuition. And when you ask them, do they use it to make decisions? Here's what we get in an organizational hierarchy. So when managers are asked, do you use your intuition to make a decision? 50% of them say yes. So we've got 50% down here. When you ask leaders, 62% of them say that they use their intuition. So you can see that as you go up an organization, it's starting to become more important. You get to the C-suite and 75% of people say that they use it. But when you get to CEOs, 99% of them saying that they're using their intuition. That's because so often when you're making complex, difficult decisions, there just isn't the data. And so when you are in uncertain, complex, difficult situation without a correct answer, you don't have much else to go on. But nobody will tell you how important that it is to bring your intuition into play. You're just left to work it out. So that's why one of my aims is to help people who are on their career journeys to understand that this is a key tool which will help you make better decisions, problem solve more effectively, access ideas that you might not otherwise immediately have come to, and judge risk in a way that means you will avoid it. So all of this is about how you actually do your job better. That's why I think it's such a fantastic thing. It's a fantastic attribute to think about and to hone. Okay, so how do you know? I've got some questions here I can see coming up. How do you know if it's intuition or your own judgments, conditioning, resistance or bias? Okay, Shaf. So one of the things to really tune into is then what are your intuitive cues? And to start with something small, because I mean, I think that judgment is probably intuition. It's probably another word that we use for intuition. Conditioning or socialization, that isn't. So questions for bias and conditioning is this a decision that I've made before and I'm just going along with what's easy? Is it that I'm feeling stress and pressure to do something? Because at that point you might like to sleep on it and just come back to what you're feeling. So for me, you know that it's you. I know that it's my intuition when I'm getting some internal signal. So is my heart beating faster because I'm used to that? Do I get a little look in my gut because I'm used to that? I know that those are some of my cues. Do I get a prickling at the back of my neck? Do I have a niggle that I really need to know something more about this? That niggle it's also intuition. I did some work with a fantastic guy in India, and he said to me, listen, you cannot use your heart, your gut. He said, I want you to concentrate on your shoulder blades, because shoulder blades, you're never tuning into your shoulder blades. What are your shoulder blades telling you? What's the back of your knees telling you? Like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It's another way of doing it. So I love also energy, Shaf. What have I got energy for? And I think that's a massive indicator. So David, instinct. So instinct is something, it's a survival mechanism. So your instinct is what will lead you to survive. So if you always think it's about, crossing a road, if a car's coming straight at you, the flight freeze, that's instinct kicking in. So instinct to survive, I think, is different from intuition, which is more about what's going on in my context and how am I going to act. And what am I feeling energy for? What am I feeling drawn to? What am I getting popping into my mind's eye as well? What's my hearing in my mind's ear? Because internally, we also have, lots of us, a symbology. So, for example, when I'm coaching, if someone's feeling stuck, I might see in my mind's eye a block. I've got this great big cement block. And there's always a way around it. But I can get caught in a parallel process with someone else and also feel blocked. And then I have to go, okay, is the block my block or their block? But I know that it's my internal symbology is helping me with that. And then I go, okay, energy. If I've got some energy in this, it's not my block. It's their block. So empathy, emotional intelligence comes a lot into this. Okay. So I'm just looking here at Mary. Stanford for intuition and creativity in business. Yeah. Oh, well, fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. I did actually check it out again when I started writing my book, which is coming out next spring, and I couldn't find a single elective on intuition. I know that some people teach creativity and then how to tune in to that. I'm going to come back to that in a sec. So, intuition, the more you go up an organization, the more you use it, the easier it is to make the best decisions that you can with the information that you have and by tuning into yourself. So let's just think here about your intuitive experience. So this is another thing to do on your phone or again on that link that I put into chat, which I can repost right now. So here, what I'm going to ask you to do is you're going to get the option to drop 4 pins. And when you drop 4 pins, your screen here will go blank, black or blank. And so if you could drop your pins on the numbers, not the words, that would be fantastic. So I'd love you just to think, have you, number 1, made the right choice, even though it wasn't the logical one? Have you ever met someone and known they'd be a great or a terrible hire? So just drop a pin on the number 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, whatever works for you. Have you ever gone against your gut only to regret it? Or am I the sole person on this call who's done that? And then gone, oh, how could I have done that? I knew all along. Or you had a strong sense that something would happen, but you weren't sure why. Or you've had none of those. So if you had none of those, you're going to only drop 1 pin on I've never had any of that. And just as a quick reminder, if you could not drop the pins all over the writing, because I'm deeply short-sighted, as you can see, and then I can't see what's on the slide. Okay, so it's good. So look, what we're getting here is, and is anybody struggling? Because if you are struggling to drop the pins, please just come off mute and let me know. So nobody's struggling. Excellent. Top news. So what I'm getting from the group is that you, as a group, are used to using your intuition. You know what that thing is, because this is the output that you see from the input, your own personal process. Okay. So Mary, you've gone against it and regret it. Lisa, you've done invisible pins on 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Good. So we have an intuitive group here. And I think that that's one of the first things is to, when you don't trust it, is because you're starting to tell yourself that you are not that kind of person. And you do trust it when you tune back into the fact that you have done these things and you have transferable experience. You can move your experience from one domain into another. And so when people say to me, help, I'm stuck, or I'm going through a dry patch, it's to reconnect with the moments where you've done it before and to say, yes, I could do this thing again. And to make a decision about something small before you make a decision about something big, or try and get information about something small before you say, is this the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with? Is this the boss I'm going to be working with for the next 20 years? Is this the house I want to live in forever and ever? So those are the things I would say. Just hang on, make small decisions and small choices before you make big ones. We have a group here who's used to this thing, and nobody has put none of these. So that's all. We're already in a good place. So how does intuition, where does it turn up? And I think it turns up in these three domains, which you might say to me, hey, Jess, that's my life. You're talking about my life. But it does turn up specifically, I think, in our work, because that's where we develop our expertise. It turns up in our well-being because we worry about it. We're concerned, how am I feeling? Am I healthy or not healthy? Is this good for me or not good for me? Should I eat less cake or go to the gym? We all know those answers, but you start to get niggles, which are those intuitive cues about your well-being. And then it's your worries. So your worries, that's easily, your family, your friends. So this is where intuition works really well. And it will be in the small things. You're thinking about someone else, and I know, Bernie, you'd call this a coincidence. You're thinking about, so I had this happen to me just a couple of days ago, I was thinking about a colleague, and I called her, and she said, oh, Jess, did I call you or you call me? Because I just was trying to call you. Okay. We both wanted to connect with each other on an issue that we were both trying to work on, without knowing that that's what we were trying to do. So this is where your intuition turns up well in your work, your well-being, and your worries. Ashraf, that happened to you yesterday. I think it's one of the big cues in life, isn't it? It's, yeah, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Here's what it means to me. So how did I get interested in this? I got interested in this, it was way back when, but I'd entirely forgotten. I was just saying to Juliet before we came on the call, I forgot that I did this interview, which is now about 15 years old. And I was interviewing Willie Walsh, who at that time was the CEO of British Airways. And now he is Director General of IATA. So when you want the airline travel to take a massive step change, he's the man who you need to write to. So I was interviewing him, and this is him talking about when he was CEO of the airline he was CEO of before, the Irish airline, and how he was making decisions about which new routes to fly. And you'll see, I would very much like not to have been in a project team that went to see him, but see what you think of this.
My COO came to me and he said, what about launching a new route to Malaga, Dublin to Malaga? I said, perfect, sounds great, oh, do it. Now that was the 14th of November, and we launched that new route on the 14th of December. About 5 months after that, so it would have been just after, it was April, yeah, so about 5 months later, this guy came into my office with a big report, maybe a couple of 100 pages. And he presented it to me and he said, this is the route analysis Dublin to Malaga. And I said, oh, thank you. So I don't read big reports, but I started glancing through the executive summary. And basically the executive summary was that we shouldn't do this. Now this was months after we had done it. So I asked him about the report. I said, who worked on it? He said his team had worked on it. I said, how many have you got in your team? I didn't know you had a team of people. Why don't you bring them in to meet with me? And he did that. So I had this team of people in front of me and, asked them about the report and they loved it. But what it failed to do was actually look at how this business was performing. Now, we had launched it within 4 weeks. Within 5 months, it was the most profitable route we were operating. But the report said, don't do it. And, when I challenged the guys on this, and asked them about, did you not look at how it was performing? And what they had done was, instead of, starting in the obvious position, they did it the way they had always done it. So they went back to, general assessment of the economic conditions. They looked at all the macro issues, the micro issues. They looked at travel patterns. They looked at the indirect travel, and they concluded there wasn't enough business to support this. But they never looked at what was actually happening. And this was one of these things where, the gut said, do it. And that's exactly what I called, when my COO came to me and said, I said, go ahead with the report. If I'd waited for the report, it would have been months later, and it would have told me not to do it. And I was there as CEO for over 3 years. During the 3 years that I was there, we launched 42 new destinations, new routes, and we didn't look at a single report, didn't commission a single piece of analysis to justify that. And we kept operating on the basis that, we knew instinctively what was right to do.
I don't know what anybody thinks of that, but we knew instinctively what was right to do. My son, who is a strategy consultant, said, I want to cry when I saw that. And I showed him that piece of video. He said, I want to cry. How could you take those risks without getting a single piece of analysis? How come Aer Lingus didn't go bust? I said, well, Willie Walsh clearly knew what he was doing. So 42 new routes and no analysis. And how could he do that? Okay, that is because he had a great deal of domain expertise. He was an expert in what he was doing. And so for me, intuition falls into these kind of, it's very, you can see it's cloudy around the edge, because, how do you actually piece these things really apart? But after thinking about this for some time, this is how I've begun to categorize it. So you've got the social and the perceptual. And that means, I'm sure you've had that experience. You walk in, you see someone, you go, oh, okay, something else is going on here. So your social intuition is generally pretty finely honed. We are social animals. Social intuition is key for our survival. But then there's the perceptual. When you just go, okay, I'm picking up some stuff here. I think this might be happening. So this is kind of the input, if you like. It's the context that you find yourself in. So your contextual intuition. And then it's the incoming data. And then you have to do something with it. And if you're an expert in your domain, which at work you will be, it's easier for you to make decisions. That's why it's tough when I've coached people who've changed industry, and their reference points have all gone because they haven't got that domain expertise where it's really quick for you to make a decision and move on. And it's part of your DNA almost. Having said that, non-expert intuition is if you are managing people and you are not the expert in what they're doing, you have to pretty quickly develop your non-expert intuition to know, is this true or not true? Am I being fed a line or not fed a line? And so as you rise up an organization and start to manage managers, of course, this becomes enormously important. So you've got the expert and non-expert. And then there's temporal. Is this the right time to move? Is it the right time to do this thing or not do it? And tons of stuff in business depends on getting the moment right. Too soon, you're ahead of the curve and people aren't ready. Too late, you've lost your first mover advantage potentially. And then there's the ethical. And is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do in these circumstances? And there's a very thin line there, but I'm sure we'll all have felt it at some point. So this is, if you like, decisional stuff. And then you've got directional stuff. When you're trying to create something new, it's the innovation. So you've got creative and generative intuition in there. And I'm sure that you'll be thinking, oh, well, the more senior you get, the less you need to use that. Well, that's not true. And there's one lovely study, again, done amongst CEOs, which shows that the type of intuition they use the most, the greatest effect is this. Yes, social intuition is coming up all the time, but creative intuition is hugely important because you're always trying to envisage the future and then think, okay, how do we get there? How are we going to make that future happen? That's the future. And then, okay, what's it going to take? So don't be fooled by jumping to assumptions about what people do and when. So we've got contextual, decisional, directional. And then we've got team sitting at the middle, and you might think, oh, team intuition. That is amongst psychological research, it's one of the newest, most recently started to be researched forms of intuition. And briefly, it's when you get a team together, essentially what people are doing, as you all know, is just bouncing information, ideas, expertise, hunches, and scenarios off each other as you are comparing and contrasting information and discussing what data or situations might mean. And at its best, when a team is working really well, you know this, new ideas arise out of and are generated within the team itself. And that does something that it doesn't happen unless the team comes together. So team intuition takes a little bit of psychological safety. It's okay to raise these things in this forum, and that you know each other well enough, because otherwise, again, knowing someone well enough means that you have some kind of relationship in there. So the relationship bit matters. So that's the typology. And sometimes it's really hard to go, oh, is it this or this? And frankly, you know what? At the end of the day, does it really matter? I'm not so sure, but lots of people love to categorize. So I thought, well, let's have a go at categorizing what these different experiences are. But I think the main thing is to understand that you can have intuitions at the beginning of a process when you're about what's incoming, the information that's incoming, and the information that's outgoing, and when you're with everybody in a context. Now, this is not about abandoning data. I've said that once, I'm going to say it again. I interviewed the head of McLaren Formula One, and he said to me, the most important thing that people need to know is this. It's that the data can precede the intuition, or the intuition can precede the data. It doesn't matter. But you have to combine the two. And if you aren't actively combining the two, what you're not doing is oscillating between two ways of thinking. So that is the most important thing to do. So I'll probably say that again at some time, because I don't want anyone to think that it's fine, abandon all information, all data. Let's just go and intuit which would be the best flight to jump on now to go to Dubai. No, that's the wrong thing. Go and hunt it out. Go to Skyscanner, find it out. If information is there for you, it's worth using. When it's complex, when it's ambiguous, when it's uncertain, when the outcomes aren't clear, that's when you want to bring our intuition into play and go, okay, what are we getting in both directions? The data to the intuition to the data. Okay, so how intuition works. Right, so we've already said it's an unconscious process. And you wouldn't actually really want it to be conscious because it'd be way too much going on there. But there's amazing skin conductance exercises and experiments which show that your skin reacts before it's in your awareness and before you're conscious of something. So your skin reacts. So it's unconscious. We know that feelings are there. And think about it, you've never made an important decision without feeling whether something is or isn't the right thing to do. So feelings are present in most of the decisions that we make. Oops, let's just scrolly back. Now the vagus nerve is super important in this, and it facilitates decision making. So you've got 500 billion neurons in your stomach, or in your enteric nervous system going on inside, and the vagus nerve wanders through all of this, and it's 80% of information that it's sending to your brain, and then you're going, okay, oh look, my stomach just clenched when this person came into the room, and that's enabled by your microbiome. So please do eat your yogurt or whatever it is that keeps you healthy. Your vagus nerve, in conjunction with your microbiome, is a great access of information and really helps you. And it's known as your second brain. Your third brain is your heart. And I'm sure you'll know that. You'll know that in terms of decisions, relations, things that your own personal experience, how important your heart is to an intuitive decision. My heart leapt at that. There's a lot of heart terminology in what we say in our daily language. And then we've got somatic markers. So memories are embodied as somatic markers. What does that mean? So let me give you an example. My daughter, when she was 2, we went away on our very first holiday, my husband and I, together. Mary's saying intuition comes in quickly when looking at too much data. and doing logic analysis confuses it. Yes. People at HeartMath say is the first brain. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Whatever your paradigm, whatever the paradigm is that works for you, I think is the most important thing to go with. So let me just get back to memories and somatic markers. So my daughter, we went away on holiday. She shut her finger in a door, and it got, when she was 2, and it became all pussy. And she had to go to the doctor and have it lanced, which as a 2-year-old, you can imagine was really painful for her. So she had this huge kind of pus mass on her fingernail. But every single summer after that, between the ages of 3 and 10, when we as a family went on holiday, she would get a pussy finger because it was so stressful. It was so stressful for her. So that was a memory that became a somatic marker for her. So our bodies are full of, sorry, my dog's normally sitting here and being very quiet, but at the moment she's just having a little go. So these somatic markers are a key for us to go, okay, what are they telling us? And Damasio was a person who did tons of work on this. If you want a reference, I'm happy to send out any papers. So I also think that you get nudges with energy, which I've referred to, and attention. So quite often, if I'm thinking, okay, what am I really experiencing here? I'll start noticing what's going on in my environment, and I'm drawn to the attentional cues that I'm receiving. So, for example, right now, if I look around, I just had someone knock on my window. Putting that to one side, I'm looking around, and my attention right now is being really drawn to this glass of water sitting right here, and it's half full, half empty. So if somebody had asked me something, and I noticed that that's what my attention had been drawn to, I might then start saying, okay, what am I listening for here? Is this person, am I hearing half full, half empty here? Am I getting more than that? So it's just a cue for me to pay attention in a different kind of way. And then quite often, once I've got the cue from my glass of water, half full, half empty, I then go to an internal experience. What is my mind's eye being drawn to? What is my mind's ear being drawn to? And those are the things that help me work with intuition, and that I've noticed help other people work well with their intuition too. By the way, metaphor is another great way. What is this like? And if you pick something up, what's it like? Your intuition may easily tune in and give you something in your mind's eye of what something might be like. I've had people say to me, "Oh, Jess, don't be silly. I cannot produce an analogy to save my life." Well, ChatGPT is your friend right now, so you can ask ChatGPT, "Give me an analogy for this." And the important thing isn't the analogy itself, but it's your reaction to that analogy. Does it make you feel up, down? Do you feel energized by it? Do you feel this is ridiculous? I'm moving away from it. I mean, what is your reaction? That's the intuitive bit. That's the nudge. Any questions about that? Okay, no questions. So we've got another, this is a word cloud that's going to appear. So if you want to now, I'd love to know how and where do you experience intuition? This is an anonymous poll. So again, it's the QR code, or here we go, back to poll Ev, if you would prefer to put it into a browser. So how and where do you experience intuition? And if you just go stomach or heart or back of my knees or soles of my feet, just pop them in there, and you might just say it's an internal thing. I can't give you any more than that. So then you just put internal. You might say it's a tickling sensation on my skin, or whatever it is for you. So if you could put your experience in, well, let's share. Let's see what people come up with. So how are we doing here? Stomach feels funny. Good. So this is live, and so it will just keep going as you respond. It's a voice. Yeah, it's quiet. And the interesting thing about intuition is it doesn't, that when I'm talking about emotional feeling coming after it, the intuition itself doesn't have that. The feeling is what comes after. And it may be very, very quick. But for me, it's generally the intuition is there, and then I get the sensation around it. So I had a funny one the other day. I suddenly went, oh, I think those two people are having an affair, and and then I got a kind of little sharp sensation, and I just asked myself, I think there's something going on between those two, isn't there? And oh yeah. So it was the thought, or the intuition came before the feeling in that case. I'm absolutely up for, some people might have it the other way around, because in psychology you've got the James Long or Cannon-Baird theory. One says the feeling comes before the thought, and the other says the thought becomes before the feeling. Take your pick. Okay, hearing a quiet voice when you relax. Yeah. And Mary, I think that when you relax, when you're falling asleep, when you've just made a space, that's when you get it. So being in the shower, chopping vegetables, going for a walk, I think pounding your brain, going, okay, what do I really think about this, is not how it's going to happen. So voice, guts, and heart. Okay. Dancing. I think this is great. Clicks. I don't know who put clicks in there. Was it something clicks? But if it's a click, it's really interesting. So, for example, I was talking to a woman last year and asking her about her intuition. She said, "Oh, it's a gut thing. It's absolutely a gut thing." So I said, "I don't know." My intuition told me, said, "Could you just point to me where your gut is?" And she went, "Oh, it's here." She pointed to her throat and said, "It's all around my throat." So, for her, it was a sensation of her throat constricting or not constricting. For her, was the thing that it was right or not right. So this is where talking about intuition is slightly like trying to pin jelly to a wall. But I think the more we share this experience that we all have, the easier it is for them, for us to understand, okay, that might be my intuition talking to me too. Or a way of helping other people go, is that your intuition? How does it work for you? Okay. So I think that what we're going to do now, we're going to, thank you very much for doing that. So now what we're going to do is we are going to get ourselves into some breakouts. And what we're going to do is this. This is just to still yourself. So you're going to take a breath, still yourself, and try and think, okay, what am I tasting, seeing, feeling, touching? Okay, my feet on the ground, my legs crossed. Is my butt in the back of my chair? How's my back being supported? Just be present to your senses. Am I feeling warm, cold? How's my energy, my attention? And then you set your intention, which is, okay, I'm just going to tune into myself and see what I experience in terms of this other person's question. So that's all you're going to do. And then you're going to allow whatever it is your attention's drawn to, your energy is drawn to, what you notice going on in your stomach, heart, head, any images that flash in for you, anything you might notice out there in the environment, because you might go, okay, that's the cue as well. So your cue might be a bell starts to ring. It could be a dog starts to bark, and that's part of the answer. And you just report and document. Now, here's a top tip from me. When you're accessing your intuitive cues for somebody else, don't look at them, because otherwise you're drawn by them. So the easiest thing to do to access your own intuitive cues is to just, obviously you're going to listen, but I just turn myself slightly away from the screen and I write down what I'm getting, because for me, intuition is so ephemeral. It just goes very, very quickly unless I write it down. Now, you might have the memory of who knows who, But my short-term memory is absolutely dire, and it's gone unless I've written it down. And that way you can report and document. And it might only last 30 seconds, and then you say, I'm done. So when you're done, you're done. You're not going to get any more. And there's no point. And if you get nothing, just please say, be honest and say, oh, I haven't got anything. And because there's no point in venting for someone else. Because what we're going to do now is in breakouts, obviously you're going to say hello, introduce yourself to someone, and just person A will describe their situation. You'll be in groups of 3, and all of you will just sit with that information and say nothing, do nothing, allow that space, and pay attention to the cues you get, which you just talked about. And when you're done, you say, I'm done, and then report back to A. And if person C has nothing to say, and if neither of you do, that's fine, keep going. And if person A then wants to go on, they can describe any ideas they have or any thoughts that they're having about their situation. And again, you just repeat the process. And so each person has 5 minutes. Now, one very important point, you're not about giving someone advice. This is about your intuitive experience. So if someone says, I really have no idea what to do, you're not there to tell them, you're just to tune into, oh, okay, how I experience that is like this. Is that totally clear? Now I'm going to stick in chat, I've got a link for you because you'll be going, oh, I can't keep all that in my head. I certainly would be. And so there is a link to both the process and the practice. So if you click on the link, I'm going to stop sharing the slides right now and ask you if there are any questions. And let's just spend 15 minutes doing this for those of you who are still here. Okay. So Juliet, could you put us in breakout rooms of 3 and let's have a go. Okay, no worries if anyone's going to drop off, no problem at all. So this is for those of you who'd like to do it.
All right. We've got 4, and then yourself and myself, Jess. So I guess we'll start the breakouts, and then you and I can each join a room.
Sure.
And then we'll have 3 in both.
Magnificent. Works perfectly.
Great. I'm going to open these rooms. At 15 minutes, you'll get 1 additional 60-second timer to count down so that whoever might be speaking has a chance to wind up. So 15 minutes plus 1.
Hello, hello.
Hi, I'll send us both to the room in just a moment. So for that instructions, is that the slide I have for the breakouts?
If you click on the Google Doc link in chat, that should be
And then the person A describing their situation, how are they selecting what situation they describe? Any kind of work?
Anything could be anything.
Okay. All right.
So could you not put me in room 2 because I know Divya?
Sure. I was going to put you in 1 anyway.
Okay, super.
Hi, Julia.
Looks like we're all coming back in now. I think it may automatically put us all on mute.
Yeah.
I'll put you back on the spotlight, Jess, here.
Oh, thank you. So has anybody got anything that they would like to share, to think about, to say as after doing that?
It was it was a very different way of doing things. I found it really hard to not just go straight into I think you should do this and this, and to actually step back and try and just be intuitive. I found that very hard.
And it's just another way of being, because normally what you're doing is, we've all been taught, oh, do active listening and, solutions focused conversations and all that stuff, rather than go, okay, what's happening for me? What is my experience in this? So yeah, it is tough, Divya, when you start. It is really hard. And I think try and think about it. You put yourself on hold for yourself. So it's what's going on for me. And it just allows you to have a beat, have that beat. Okay. David, you're off mute. I don't know whether you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer that it surprised me how much I got from it. To be honest, I was like, what is this? And I thought I sort of kind of knew where I was with certain things with my question once I came up with my question. But I got some really good feedback from both people that kind of punctuated some things that I may have sort of known or whatever, but it gave it more, those areas more emphasis for me to be aware of or to consider. So it was quite helpful.
Oh, well, good. And it's much easier to be intuitive and to have thoughts for people that you don't know. When you know people, it's like you get into a London taxi, you can share your entire life with a London cabbie because they don't know you, or your hairdresser, or whatever it is, your barber. When you know people, we start to self-edit and start to go, is that a thing? Was that not a thing? Should I say that thing? Oh, maybe that's a bad thing to say. So we get caught up in self-editing, whereas when it's someone that you don't know, you just can say whatever is. You can only go with what you're getting. But I'm glad that worked for you. Thank you, David. Anybody else? I notice we've got a new joiner, Kelly, here. So welcome, Kelly, for the last few minutes. Zarko or Annie? Yeah, Annie.
I didn't obey you. I kept my eyes on the screen, but then I saw that tree in the back, and it made me realize that we're a forest of trees, but it's our roots that are connected. And that's where the intuitive is. So it was nice to have that metaphor.
Yeah, lovely. Both you and Zarko picked that up. So that was a lovely coincidence. So just as a reminder that we're here as part of the Coincidence Cafe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get kind of mostly feeling of solidarity. That's it. I cannot kind of describe it otherwise. So it didn't have much to do with seeing something else or making some kind of solution, intuiting something else, but this feeling of solidarity with both of you in the group, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Yes. And just on my part, I felt very held by both of you. And sometimes that's all it is. It's just this feeling. So when we worked together in a room, Zarko and Annie, for what was it, like 10, 15 minutes. But I would now be very happy to work with you again, to take a risk, to trust, because we've had that experience. And I think that that's another thing that intuition does, is it allows you to take more of a risk. And so with that in mind, are there any questions that anybody wants to ask in the last few minutes, or shall I just go onto my final screen? So if you've got a question, raise your hand. And if you haven't, I'll go onto my final screen. I'll share my final screen. Or maybe I won't. All I was going to say, which doesn't actually really need a slide, is that it's trust but verify. So intuition is a powerful tool, but it can also be wrong. And so this trust but verify, I think, is important. So if you get a hit, a piece of information, and you think that that's important, before you act on it, I would look for something else in the environment, if it is at work particularly, because you don't want to be rushing down the wrong road and rushing off a cliff with taking a bunch of other people with you. People can make big mistakes when they think, oh, my intuition is that it will all work out, and then it doesn't. And I'm sure that we've all experienced that at work. Intuition is not an excuse either. My gut tells me this is a bad thing to do. Actually, your gut should be more specific than that. Your gut should be telling you this is a bad thing to do because. So if anyone says to you, my gut is telling me this is a bad thing or it's a good thing, ask them exactly what their gut is telling them, because they should be getting something more than just yes, no. And finally, please don't use your intuition when you're in halt circumstances, which is when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So hungry, angry, lonely, tired leads to mistakes. So I know that my intuition doesn't work so well for me in the evening. That's when it's better for me to leave it, sleep on something, and see how I feel in the morning. So thank you very much for being here. For those of you who need to go, I really appreciate you turning up. And for those of you who want to hang on, hang on.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take off and cook dinner.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
So Juliet is record off.